You're listening to Called to Create, a podcast designed for the creative entrepreneur. I'm your host, Hannah McLane, a wedding photographer turned educator who is passionate about helping other creatives build the businesses of their dreams. Welcome to my first ever episode of my podcast. Thank you so much for joining me in this crazy journey. I am so pumped, you guys, to share my story of how I got into photography and the creative industry. I just think it's so important before you even know what I think and preach or anything I'm going to be talking about on this podcast to know how I got there. So my story really goes all the way back to childhood. When I was growing up, my mom always had a DSLR camera, and she brought that camera to almost everything. Fun fact about me, I am the oldest of 7 children, so there were always family events going on, family birthday parties, sporting events, and my mom always brought the camera with her. So from a young age, I think I was always fascinated with how is this camera taking such quality photos? Like, I just was kind of interested with how camera works, and whenever she wasn't using it, I remember taking it when I was little and just taking pictures of my siblings in the backyard or friends. We would go have photo shoots in the flower fields, all those things. I never really considered it a hobby, but looking back, I think my interest in photography, my interest in cameras did start from a young age. But really, my story doesn't start. We're going to fast forward all the way until 2020. I was in college at the time for early childhood education. My whole life, I thought I was going to be a teacher. Like, I remember in elementary school telling my teacher, I'm going to be a teacher. Like, I'm going to teach little kids. I knew that I wanted to work with young children. I think having so many siblings, I was just always surrounded by younger kids. All of the jobs I had growing up were working with children. So I just thought that I was going to be a teacher. That was just what my path was going to be. And so sure enough, I go to school and I'm taking classes to be a teacher, and I wasn't loving it. I loved working with children. I was passionate, and I'm still passionate about working with young children, but what I wasn't passionate about was the education system, and I really just wasn't fired up about what my future was going to look like in the pursuit of an education degree. So I just was really kind of in a low spot, not enjoying school, but things really started to go downhill in March of 2020 because the pandemic hit. As I'm sure all of you can remember, March of 2020 very vividly. I was sent home from university. I went and moved back with my parents, and all my college classes at the time went virtual, and everyone was on lockdown. I was at quarantine at my parents' house. I was so bored, as I'm sure all of you were. We can all think back to where we were in March of 2020 when we all were sent to lockdown. But I had a lot of time on my hands. I was so bored. I didn't know what else to do with my free time. So I took my mom's DSLR camera out of the cabinet and started just messing around and taking pictures of my sister in the backyard. I was really just having fun with it because I was bored. But the boredom kind of led to this in-depth interest, I guess. I mean, I just was so bored. We were taking pictures so often, and I started to have a lot of fun with getting creative with shoots. Like, I would take my sister to the beach or a field, and I really liked the creative aspect of directing how to pose her. Or I loved when I would come home, take the pictures out of the camera, upload them to my laptop, and just start messing with the editing. And I mean, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. When I say editing them, I was like uploading them into Visco or Instagram and like jacking up the contrast or the exposure, just kind of messing with certain elements of the photo and seeing what would happen. I just thought that was kind of fun. That's kind of where I think my creative eye started to like blossom. I was like, oh, this could be really cool. So throughout quarantine, I started to take more and more photos of family and friends. As quarantine started to lift up, I started, asking some friends if they would be my models. It really was just fun. I was bored. It was a hobby that I thought I was going to pick up for that summer while I was home. I actually ended up creating an Instagram, again, just for fun, because I wanted, to show my work to friends and family. I had maybe like 50 followers. Like, when I say I had an Instagram, it really was just for me. I wanted to post pictures that I was taking and have them all in one spot. But through posting on Instagram just for family and friends, people started to know or hear about that I was taking pictures and doing photography. So I actually had a mutual friend reach out to me and ask if I could do her sister's senior photos. And when I say I very hesitantly agreed, I very hesitantly agreed because I had never done anything like that. I had never done an organized shoot. Like, I was the one who usually was initiating, like asking for models. I had never had someone reach out to me and be like, hey, can you take my pictures? Especially someone that I didn't really know. Like, I knew them through the grapevine, but I really didn't know this senior. It was definitely out of my comfort zone. But anyways, I took the session, and at this point I still seriously know nothing about photography. I was shooting in automatic. I didn't know what Lightroom was. I didn't know how to edit a picture. Totally new to this photography thing still. But I ended up taking the senior pictures, and it went pretty well, I thought. I mean, they liked the pictures. At the time, I loved the pictures. It went pretty well, and I took the shoot on for free. I wasn't going to charge them. But at the end of the session, her mom gave me $20. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I don't want you to pay me for this. Like, that adds a lot of pressure. Like, I really just want the experience. Don't pay me. And she's like, no, I really want to pay you for your time. And I was just flabbergasted that someone was willing to pay me $20 for my time to take pictures. Like, seriously, mind blown. I had never made money from this, nor was I planning on ever making money from this. So I think that first $20 was so eye-opening to me because I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I could actually make money off this. Like, the thought of creating a business out of this was still not even in my mind, but I was like, this could be something that I could do to help myself get through college or just make a little bit of extra spending money while I'm in school. So that $20 was a big deal, very eye-opening for me. But fast forward a little bit, 2020 comes around and I go back to campus. School starts to be a little bit in person. Some of it was still virtual, but I went back on campus and I started classes back up and was just absolutely miserable. I hated it, for a lack of better words. I felt so burnt out by the profession, and I was not even all the way in the field, right? I was still in school. So I was like, how am I going to handle this when I'm actually in the teaching field? Like, I already hate it. I had a lot of internships that were virtual, which didn't help. I was placed in a lot of really troubled schools. It was just a very difficult experience for me. And I just felt deep down like I wasn't following what I was supposed to be following. I was following a path that everyone was telling me I was supposed to be on and what I felt like I was supposed to be on, but I did not feel like I was following the right path. And so photography really started to be my escape from school. It was like a stress reliever, coping mechanism almost for me. And I started to get really hungry to actually understand my camera and gain photography related knowledge. So I think it was a Facebook ad that actually popped up on my feed. I know, like, who scrolls through Facebook when they're 20 years old? I don't know. I was bored scrolling through Facebook one night and there was an ad for a photography shooting and editing course that caught my eye. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so cool to learn like the basics of photography. And so I ended up looking into it. It was like a $400 course. And to a broke college student, $400 was like a lot to me. I was like, oh, I don't know if I should spend that kind of money. That's like half of my savings account. And so I put it off for a while, but that like hunger for more knowledge came, and I was eating up a lot of like YouTube content, and I was listening to podcasts, a bunch of photography educators. I was just consuming all their content. But the one thing I couldn't figure out was shooting in manual. I really needed like a hands-on course. Like, the YouTube videos were very overwhelming to me. It wasn't really clicking. I didn't feel like I was gaining an understanding of how to like really control my camera. So I ended up deciding to invest in this course, which again was a huge deal to my broke college self. And the course ended up teaching me really well how to shoot in manual. And I started to want to shoot all the time once I understood how to use my camera properly, right? So I drug my poor college roommate to a field probably just about every other day to practice. I was just so excited to try a bunch of different scenarios, a bunch of different locations. The course also taught, lighting, composition. It was a little bit more than just like how to shoot in manual. I was just so excited. At this point, my knowledge of like actual photography concepts was a lot higher than it was, a year ago. And I was so pumped to just like implement all these things that I had learned. And I remember just like going around our apartment and finding like the fake plants or the pieces of decor and like taking pictures of them with my camera inside, seeing like if I could manipulate the lighting or seeing if I turned this light on, how can I get a good quality picture because it's orange, or like just manipulating certain factors to try different scenarios and just really honing in on those camera related skills that I didn't have before. I was practicing all of the time. And so at this point, I was just consuming literally any and all education I could in the photography world. And I was posting any shoots that I did, which were mostly still just like model calls and my roommate. I was posting it on Instagram, that same Instagram that I started back in 2020. And during that, I started to create reels on Instagram in probably mid 2021. So that was like the time when TikTok had just gone viral, like really viral. Like during COVID, everyone was on TikTok. It was blowing up. Instagram was just trying to keep up with the times, really, and they were pushing short form videos, trying to keep up with TikTok. And I kind of hopped on that really quick when they were blowing up. So this was seriously the time when you didn't need to post quality content. You didn't need to have a strategy. And let me tell you, I was not posting quality content. I was not, there was no strategy involved. There was no method to my madness. I was throwing reels out there because I saw that that was what was going viral for people. So I started creating like behind the scenes videos or like little videos of posing ideas, things like that. And I was getting probably 50 to 100,000 views from every video that I was creating, and I had almost no audience. So the power of Instagram's algorithm pushing reels at that time was just insane. I don't even know how to describe it. My content was being put in front of so many people, and that was such a missed opportunity looking back, because the content I was creating wasn't driving clients. It wasn't even really driving followers to my page. It was simply just for their entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I really wasn't gaining anything from the huge audience that I had. I wasn't seeing any kind of like turnaround from that. So I really wanted to figure out at that point how I could turn the eyes that I was having on social media, turn the audience I had into paying clients, because I knew I kind of wanted to take this somewhere at this point. I started to see the power of like photography and like how cool it was. I followed a lot of like photography educators, who had very successful businesses. At this point, I knew what the potential was, and I kind of wanted to tap into that. So I started being a little bit more intentional with what I was posting on Instagram. I started posting my availability. I started posting my packages. I was just way more open about finding clients and like, this is what I offer, like, this is what you need, that kind of stuff. And so I ended up getting one of my very first paid clients on Instagram. I believe she found me through some kind of reel that I created. And it was a huge deal for me because at the time I really had never had I had a few paying clients before, but they were family and friends or mutual friends. This was a complete stranger that I met off the internet. I know, terrifying, right? That my job is to meet strangers off the internet and get paid for taking their pictures. But I was so fired up that this stranger found me and wanted me to take their pictures. So I ended up doing a couple shoot for them. And as crazy as this sounds, this couple led me to my very first wedding inquiry. So the session was over, and she actually asked me if I did wedding photography because her sister is getting married that summer, and it's just like a low-key elopement on the beach, and they're looking for a wedding photographer. And I was like, Maybe. Because at that point, the thought of wedding photography absolutely terrified me. You know, the thought of having to capture someone's first kiss or them walking down the aisle, like there's no redos, right? I didn't know that I was really there in my skill level yet or confident enough to tackle something like that. So I just kind of said, like maybe I'll think about it. If you want to give your sister my contact information and we can connect on that, we'll see if we can work something out. So, long story short, I ended up booking her sister for a wedding. She knew that I was new to the photography world, but they were just doing a low key elopement. They didn't really have, you know, insane expectations. I was excited for it, but like insanely nervous because I had zero wedding experience. At that point in my life, I'd probably only attended like 5 weddings as a guest. I really did not know what went into the behind the scenes of shooting a wedding. So, between booking the wedding and actually shooting that wedding, I was scrambling. I mean, seriously scrambling to find experience before shooting that wedding because I just wanted, to see how it works before I was just supposed to do one myself. So I ended up finding a second shooting gig and shadowed a more experienced photographer, which was so helpful. If you guys are thinking of getting into the wedding industry, want to try it out, or you want experience, second shooting is the way to go because it was so eye-opening to me to see just how she was running the day and seeing some kind of like prompt and posing ideas, all of the things that go into being a wedding photographer that I was totally unaware of. I knew going into my first wedding because I had seen that. So super great experience for me. So the first wedding rolls around and I shoot it. Everything goes pretty smoothly compared to how I thought it was going to go. I think I went in with the mindset that this is going to be an absolute disaster. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised that everything went smoothly and I ended up loving it. Like instantly, I fell in love with the wedding industry. I love the details. I love the ambiance of the day, the happiness. Oh my gosh, everything about it. I was like, how can I do this again? I just instantly fell in love with shooting weddings. And I saw the potential really early on to make a lot of money in the wedding industry. So after I shot that first wedding, I continued to get a few like second shooting gigs. I just wanted, to build up that portfolio and gain some experience. And once I started to have some photos that I could post on Instagram from second shooting from my solo wedding, I started to get a few inquiries from, again, people that I didn't know, just from Facebook groups or from Instagram. It was so exciting that I was starting to see the fruits of my labor because I was putting everything into it at this point. So after that summer of shooting my first few weddings, I was supposed to head back to school to continue pursuing the education degree, but I just wanted absolutely nothing to do with it at this point. It was just causing so much anxiety for me. I knew that I wasn't going to even end up using the degree, and the only reason I was there was because I wanted to please others, and I thought it was what I was supposed to do. So I dropping out of school was at the forefront of my mind, I would say, but I was struggling with so much doubt. I never in a million years, you guys, would have expected to be a quote unquote college dropout. I was the girl who always cared about my grades way too much and what other people thought about me. And so, that was just an absolutely terrifying thought to me. Both of my parents have master's degrees. Everyone in my family is very well educated. I just didn't want to be labeled as the college dropout. So I just kept going with the classes, but eventually I hit such a low point where my anxiety started to take a toll on my physical health, and I knew that I just needed to take a step back. I knew that I needed to take at least a break from school, and my now husband was always the number one encourager really for me to step back and look at why I was in school. He would always ask me like, "Why are you doing this? Like, is it because you want to be doing this, or is it because you think everyone else wants you to be doing this?" And I think he also saw the potential in my business a lot earlier on than I did, and he really was pushing me to pursue that rather than a degree that I wasn't going to use. But I kept fighting him on that, and I kept fighting the Lord on that, and finally, at the end of 2021, I made the decision to drop out of school and take my business seriously. At this point, I did have a job teaching preschool, so photography wasn't really my sole income, but without school in the picture, I had so much time to invest in my business compared to before. And after taking it seriously, I started to see a huge influx in inquiries and bookings because I had more time to improve my business, my social media, my connections really started to blossom in the industry. And seriously, within about 6 months, I had a full calendar of weddings booked. It was insane. And I think because of the pressure that I felt from dropping out of school, that really drove me to be successful in booking a calendar. I was so motivated, man, because I did not want to look like I just dropped out of school and then was doing nothing with my life. I was so motivated to prove myself, really. So within that 6 month time frame from when I dropped out of school to like booking a full calendar of weddings, I actually was able to quit my teaching job. So it was a very fast paced growth journey. And in the process of building up a successful business so quickly, I had so many other creatives reaching out to me and asking in my DMs for advice. And I just kind of started sharing that on Instagram. I was sharing my tips and tricks. I was doing a lot of Q&A sessions. I was just sharing any and all knowledge that I had. And at that point, it really wasn't a lot sometimes, but I was learning pretty early on that the little bit of knowledge that I thought wasn't a lot, or the little bit of knowledge that I was sharing, meant a lot to somebody else, somebody who was behind me, somebody who had just started. It was helpful for someone. So along the way, as I started to share, I started to develop this like insane passion for entrepreneurship in general, not just photography, but entrepreneurship. I was able to scale my business from a side hustle to a 6-figure business within 3 years. And I wanted to share that with other people. It's like, I never imagined that is something that I would have been able to do. But I didn't think that I was different than anyone else. Like, I didn't think I had some kind of superpower or some kind of insane talent level. Like, it was just intentional strategy that I was implementing in my business, and I wanted to share that with others. Like, I didn't want to keep that to myself. Like, I was like, why shouldn't every business owner and every photographer, every creative entrepreneur have the ability to take their side hustle to a 6-figure business? Like, why shouldn't they? So in this crazy season of growth, I started to teach a lot of strategies that I was implementing in my business. I started offering mentorships, more educational resources, and that's how I kind of fell into this business coaching space. So my heart for a while has been, how can I get long form educational content out to my audience to share of these strategies I have used to make my business what it is today? And so the idea of this podcast was born. And that's really my story from point zero until today. And hopefully some part of my story resonated with you or inspired you to keep pursuing your passion. I'm so excited, you guys, to start diving into some great topics on here. And my hope is that in sharing and in bringing other creative and business experts on here, you guys will leave feeling refreshed and more equipped in your business journey. If you made it this far into my ramble, thanks for listening. I'm so excited to have you on this journey. And if you enjoyed listening to my story, you're going to enjoy what's next a whole lot more. Love y'all, and talk to you next Tuesday.